sad. And I'm glad that we were doing this before that came to light and addressing the issue. But one thing that really struck me in there that I think is so important today is people listening to understand the other person, because I think very often we listen to respond and not understand how or why we got to be there. So I really am just, like everyone else said, I'm so thankful we're doing this work and that we've been doing it and the work your team did last year to see this move forward is really great. So thank you. All right. Mass smiles, yes. All right, we will move to reports. I don't believe there was any workshops or conferences. Member Olson is absent. Member Ketto, do you have a report from the City of Forest Lake?
I have a couple of issues with the City of Forest Lake. As we all know, this November, there are at least a few spots on the election for November. Mara Bain is running uncontested for mayor again, and Sam Husnick, who, as we all know, is our school board liaison and has done an excellent job as being that liaison, is also running for office. And last but hardly least, as I have said probably in the last 3 or 4 meetings, the roundabout is finally done.
Beautiful.
Yes,
So
And it's a beautiful roundabout. Yes, it is.
it showcases our building.
It does.
All right, thank you, Member Ketto. And before we move forward, I did miss positive happenings on the agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share?
Just a staff development meeting. I mean, a number of us attended the meeting, and I thought that was excellent. I'd like to recognize, and thank Dr. Pastano and Dr. Eddie Walls for being there. I mean, I thought both did an excellent job. So it was just a great start to the year. I'm sorry that we couldn't all be up on the stage again, as we have done in the past, singing a song or dancing, but unfortunately, it was a great meeting.
Well, I concur, and I want to congratulate our board chair on his excellent speech. I thought that he spoke with a lot of conviction and spoke directly to our staff and our teachers, and it was just a great job, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. That was a highlight, to be there, to see everybody back, to know, have a good plan where we're going. And the presenters I only caught the first portion of it. I had to get back to work, but really great. And I also want to commend Dr. Massey for his leadership and his speech and welcoming the new staff. And it was a good event and socially distant and able to get so many people into the same event at once utilizing technology. So, yeah, thank you for that.
One other thing, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Massey, but we're hoping to get the PowerPoints from both presenters. So, I mean, if anybody wasn't at the meeting or would like to look in, there may be a chance.
Yeah, we do have Dr. Pastrano's slides, and we'll get those to Diane. We'll be able to secure those today, so we'll get those out to the board.
Those are great.
And
Thank
will
you.
not YouTube stay up?
YouTube will stay up
Okay.
indefinitely, so if you want to watch it a rerun, you can certainly do
You
that.
and Jeff are on there, the YouTube?
Yes.
Oh, great. Sorry, I missed it. I was moving my son in the
Priorities.
at the meeting.
Right.
All right, thank you for that. We will move now to, I guess, Member Rayfield's absent, so we'll go to the superintendent's report. Dr. Massey.
Thank you. Tim, you want to grab my slides? So I'm going to just do a brief update on some opening school related items. You may not notice the subtle change here, but the maroon box there next to the FL now says learning together, not planning. That's not to suggest that we are not still planning and adjusting and monitoring. We are, of course. But school starts September 8th. You've heard me say that this has been a daunting summer of planning, and it has. We've had large stakeholder input in our planning for sure. But it's arguably true that the hardest work began this week when staff came back and started getting their head around our reopening plans and what that meant for their teaching. there's nothing normal, even though we're in person elementary, there's nothing normal about this year. And sure, staff will draw on what they've become accustomed to doing, but they're doing it in a very different way and different world, of course, we all are aware of. So just a huge amount of credit to the amazing amount of work that is taking place throughout the week. And while tomorrow is not officially a work day, our schools will be full of teachers still getting themselves ready. And I think it's safe to say that Saturday, Sunday, Monday will be heavy with a continued planning as we prepare toward Tuesday. So a lot of credit goes to buildings and the work now taking place to make this learning year start happening. I want to walk through our county case numbers, and I want to highlight a few important pieces here. We've been monitoring county case numbers since July 30th, when these metrics were given to us by the governor. The metrics table above at the top there, we have now become familiar with, and it speaks to where we might be with our opening plan based on county case numbers. You know, we are driven by the county case numbers in Anoka, Chisago, and Washington County. You've heard me say, and we have talked almost every time we have this conversation, that we start the big picture, which is where we at by way of county case numbers. And because we represent the borders of 3 counties, we have to look at the broader context and into the weeds a little bit around what it means for Forest Lake specifically. We've been, as I indicated, we monitor the 2-week case count starting the week of July 18th. And you can see the metric based on the county case numbers over a 2-week period of time for 10,000 residents. Put us in-person learning elementary and hybrid secondary. In each 2-week period thereafter, you can see the relative increase in that metric as we move toward the start of the year. And of course, that has been a cause of concern and certainly heightened monitoring, and we've been doing that each step of the way. And we got our latest 2-week run today, because it gets released on Thursdays. And you can see Anoka actually dropped slightly, still at the upper range of that 10 to 19 range. Chisago is nudging up. There's a big jump there, but still well within that range. But if you notice Washington County, we now have a count of 22.7, and that should draw attention, and it does. We are now based on one county, and our geography as part of that county, not the entire county, but the geography, would suggest that that is a number that causes us to dig deeper into what might be going on for our district. And might that number suggest that we alter our model? And again, we look broadly and then we look locally. So let's look locally. When we look locally, we're now looking at zip code counts. I want to point out that the zip code counts is a different number. Here we're looking at 2-week count per 10,000 residents. We're not doing that here. We're looking at cumulative counts per zip code. If you look at 55025, starting 8/13, the total number of positive identified cases, 138. And then the next week, the cumulative count of 163. If you slide over to the right, week 2 suggests, or it doesn't suggest, but is a number that represents the increase from 8/13 to 8/20. It's an increase of 25 additional cases to the cumulative total. From 8/20 to 8/27, another 24 in that zip code, which represents Forest Lake and Columbus specifically. And then today, 9/3 represents an increase of 16 from the previous week. you'll notice that we go 25, 24, 16, which is a slowing of the cumulative case count for that zip code, based on positive cases reported. Let's look at 55092, Wyoming, Linwood, East Bethel. And there you can see the case counts drop from the previous week, from 11, an additional 11 from the previous week to, in this case, an additional 8 from the previous week. So a slight drop there as well. Scandia 55073 is relatively stable, and Marine, Scandia area is relatively stable as well. I do have a number for, I follow the Lino Lakes area. I'm not showing it only because it includes Circle Pines, Lexington area, which gets toward the Blaine area. And it just doesn't represent our district well enough to let that kind of cloud our data, so to speak. So we're looking more globally at Anoka County, which is go down today, and the zip code, this zip code down. I'm not so sure the average is a fair statistic, but I run it just to see what it does for us. The average of week 1 or week 2 increase over week 1, 8.5. The increase increases the average of 9.5 is an increase from week 2 to week 3, but it dropped today from the previous week. So when we look at the aggregate, county as a whole, and locally our zip code, I would offer that we are still in that we need to be watching this because we are on the border of where the metric might suggest we should be. We are still fiercely committed to making sure that we are offering a safe plan for our students and our staff. We are in no way driven to be reckless or blind to the data, trying to let the data drive what we do. But the data I would offer is more broad than just the count. Now let me take a minute and talk to you a little bit about the conversation we had with the Minnesota Department of Health last Wednesday, I believe it was. And we had one of the school-related officials from the Minnesota Department of Health on the line. We had a good hour-long conversation specific to our counties and Forest Lake area schools and our decision to be in-person elementary, hybrid secondary. And she pressed us on our safety plan and our reopening plans. And we walked her through the different measures we have in place at the elementary, the different measures we have for hybrid at the secondary, including at the secondary level, measures to, for instance, identify which kids sit where during lunch. That's a big deal in the event that a student tests positive and they're in the lunchroom with 190, 200 other kids. Do we know who might be exposed with a positive case? So we are implementing a plan whereby when students sit down at a table, they write their name on a sheet of paper so we can document who's at that table. We also have cameras, and we can actually follow where kids might be who they have contact with in the lunchroom. And then kids will be released to the lunch line to get their food. So we're regulating the congregation of the kids in the lunch line by way of doing it. Much easier to contact trace in the event that we have a case in the lunchroom. We're allowing kids to enter multiple doors so they're not bottlenecking on their way into the school. Kids are going from point A, class first hour, to point B, second hour, as a transition, not a passing time. Passing time is permission for let's congregate, let's gather until the bell rings, the 1 minute bell, and then we'll scatter to class. Now kids will move at the end of hour 1 directly to hour 2. Our kids are gonna wanna stop and talk with their friends. We all did that when we were in high school, but in today's climate, they need to be moving from point A to point B, and the staff are prepared to facilitate that movement. So clearly kids are mixing. In fact, the health department official said, you're hybrid elementary or secondary, which makes good sense. But the mixing of students is really the concern in your ability to contact trace. We've reduced at the middle school and high school the numbers by 50%, plus the kids that are in Ranger Academy. So we've reduced the number of kids in the school by over 50% each day, allowing us to better track and monitor and regulate student congregation. At the elementary level, I've talked quite a bit about the different measures in place that our planning team has developed and principals have developed in the respective schools. Primarily, first of all, while we're not hybrid, we've got 400 elementary kids that are in Ranger Academy. We've added 7 FTE, further reducing class sizes through COVID relief dollars. We have significantly lower class sizes in almost every case. There's still some that are in the mid-20s, but we've gotten rid of materials in classrooms so we can better space desks. And it's important to understand that at the elementary level, classes will stay as pods or cohorts. We are not mixing learning groups from one third grade classroom to another third grade classroom. They're staying together in that classroom for a small group within that classroom or large group instruction, not mixing with other classes. At recess, there are measures in place to monitor kids, and they'll have on the first day they'll be able to play in this area, the next day they rotate to this area, the next day they get to play in this area as a class. So we're not going to put three classes out there and have them mix for 20 minutes. We're going to do our best to keep those kids together. Again, minimizing the exposure to other kids. We're spacing kids in lunchrooms. If you go to Columbus Elementary, for instance, we have tables on the stage. We have tables that are going to be out in the entryway to the lunchroom as a way to minimize the number of kids at a lunchroom table. All these measures were talked about with the Minnesota Department of Health, giving her a high degree of comfort and confidence that we've got really good measures in place. With that conversation, then, we press her. If our numbers move from clearly in the 10 to 19 range and nudge to 20, 21 in 1 or 2 counties, should we use that as we must move? She said there's not a big difference between 22 and 19. If you're still able to keep your safety measures in place for kids, teachers, and you're minimizing the exposure and the interaction of kids within the school. All of that to suggest and offer as an update that yes, 22.7 is creates heightened concern for us. It means that we need to continue to really zero in and monitor that and drill into that number as we move forward, and we will do that. We'll get another update next Thursday. But at this stage, given the planning and that slight jump in Washington County, and in mind with the zip code data, I believe we need to continue with in-person elementary, hybrid secondary, as we've been planning since July 30th. And we'll continue to monitor weekly as these numbers continue to move and adjust, and be prepared, I would say, for our community that we may need to move. And no family should be surprised if we need to move from in-person to hybrid. If families need to be making daycare arrangements, they should be thinking that through now. What this means at home, they should be thinking this through now. We don't take lightly what a decision might do to family dynamics and family situations and resources. At the same time, our job is to provide a safe learning environment for kids. So that is, I'll pause for questions in just a moment. We developed this week our home checklist. So what you see here, and this was mailed out or emailed out today as a resource for families. It'll be on our website as well. We're asking families to do daily wellness check with the kids before they leave the front door, the back door, whatever they need to get on the bus or hop in the car to get to school. And you can send to the first box, please check your child's temperature before they go to school. We are not temperature checking. We're asking families to do that at home. And we are very clear, do not send your child to school if they have any of the common symptoms or 2 or more of the less common symptoms. And then it spells out when and if the kid should be checked, and if positive, then what they should be doing by way of quarantine. So very clearly and explicit in terms of this guidance. I've talked about the safety precautions, specifically 406 Ranger Academy kids at the elementary, 460 Ranger Academy students at the secondary level. And then we also were provided by Minnesota Department of Health a decision-making tree, if this, then that, by way of a positive case or exposure, so that we're very clear that if there's a positive case in a home, what that means for siblings. Or if there's an exposure that doesn't fit the alarming exposure of 15 minutes within a 6 feet circle, what that means for monitoring symptoms and so on. So that would be a very helpful tool and resource for us. So with that, I will pause before we get to another topic, take any questions.
Member Tyson?
Well, I think what's paramount is the health and safety of our teachers and our students and all of our staff. And I really like how you're drilling down on that information where the counties intersect in those corners of our school district. I'm happy to hear that you're really figuring out what that looks like for us overall. Do you feel like when you had the visit from the woman from the MDH that it sounds like we're really going on the science and the data, and she's pretty confident with what our protocols are, correct?
Yeah, we've got a good metric to use, but there's no exact science here. I think we'd all understand that. But we're using the best advice, the best guidance from our local health, state health, Washington County Health Department has been very helpful as well, helping us understand what's going on in Washington County. She believes that we've got a good plan in place and that we're being deliberate and thoughtful and using proper information as we make decisions as we move forward.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions? Member Luther?
A couple little questions. Do the children in Ranger Academy have their class data yet? So they are teacher assigned?
I believe that we've assigned at the elementary level who classroom assignments, yes. And at the secondary level, students have their regular class that they would have, yes.
Okay. And I appreciate the level of detail that we have out there. We still end up getting questions from our friends, of course, but being able to refer them in is really good. People are asking about what type of warning they would get. Like, we know when we see numbers and we know when we're getting close, but would there be is there a protocol that they will be aware of you'll get a text, or we'll say, okay, Monday we're going to hybrid and we're talking about Tuesday, the previous week, or would it be just overnight?
You know, our hope and the direction we've received from the Department of Education is that we would provide a minimum 1 week notice before we make that transition. We're also provided the opportunity to provide staff planning time for that transition, depending upon what that transition looks like and where we're at in the calendar and so on and so forth.
So,
Member Corcoran?
I just, with the possibility of doing the hybrid for elementary, are we, like, for smart school age care, are we like, really, like, keeping that, I mean, you know, for the future? I mean, are we if that happens within a week, are we gonna be able to accommodate more kids?
Yeah, Director McKinney and his staff have been working really hard,
Okay.
having the framework ready to go and the system ready to go. If we go hybrid, we're providing childcare for tier 1 parents who work in tier 1 industries, the critical service industries. So we're ready to provide that school day childcare for tier 1 workers if we move to hybrid.
Advertising.
So I just had one more quick question, Steve. So when we do make that switch, and remember a listener asked the question, so we get like a week notice for parents, do teachers get any extra time to prepare for that and not go into that feeling just all, not ready and kind of stressed?
Yeah, we will most likely provide time for teachers to make that transition. I don't know what that amount of time looks like, if it's at the end of, or going into MBA and we need a couple of days, if it's depending upon where we're at in the quarter, we'll take all those things into consideration and provide the time that is necessary for staff to prepare for that transition.
That's good. Excellent. Thank you.
These decisions and these plans weigh heavy on families, they weigh heavy on our teaching staff. There's probably not a teacher or an employee in the district that isn't monitoring this and isn't thinking about this on a regular basis. Without further questions, I'm going to take just a few minutes and highlight some things that were already shared. Thank you for sharing. Our keynote address with Dr. Wallace and Dr. Castrano. We had all 1,000+ employees, digitally or in person, locked into this jail. So we were able to move our entire staff system from food service workers to our bus drivers, custodians, teaching staff, paraprofessional staff, all staff members engaged in this important training. And I was moved by Castrano's quote, "We cannot function in a multicultural world with a monoculture mindset. And we cannot practice equity and inclusion without cultural competence and systems thinking." So just some really important concepts, work, and movement for our district. We've been working with the Everyone Belongs Project for almost a year now, and we're now ready to move into the Equity Innovation Lab. Those dates are set. We begin on Saturday, September 26th, from 9 to 12:30. These will all be virtual. We had the 3 learning series sessions last October, cultural lens, cultural bias, dimensions of diversity. Now we're into moving from learning to action. So these lab sessions and work session is all about setting a community-wide, district-wide vision around what does it mean to create a community of belonging? And what are the actions that we're taking as a system? And you can see the alignment to our strategic plan with this work as well. So I will be sharing out these dates with the board. In fact, they're on my weekly updates. Please mark your calendar if you're available and plan to join us. And I'm grateful for Principal Kimmy Newby and his work and his presentation today highlighting the work that we are doing. There are many things that we are doing as a district, as Chair Peterson mentioned, around equity, inclusion, belonging, creating a more just and equitable system for all of our kids. Some of that key work was launched in just a powerful way across our system. Every school will have what they're calling a hate speech presentation. So we are very clear in defining for every student what is considered hate speech, slurs, hateful language, and preparing staff for when staff hear that. What does a response look like, and what do they do with that information? Well, they refer them, they intervene, but they refer that student or that group to the safe space team that then can work with that student or that group to better understand, educate, hold accountable, better understand and be meet, get parents involved, and hopefully build understanding, perspective, if not even relationship, to begin to change that behavior and move forward with that kind of behavior. So we're extremely excited about that. One of our staff members developed a poster that we think really captures some of this, and we'll be replicating this and adding this to our buildings around the district. And with that, that concludes my review.
Do you have any questions for Dr. Massey?
I really like that poster though. That is excellent.
Yeah, again, I couldn't be happier with the work and progress that we're working toward in equity and inclusion and making sure that all people feel welcome in our district. So with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'd like to pull 7.3. Sorry.
That's okay. We have a motion on the floor though currently for it. Could you address it under discussion?
Sure.
Let's just do that.
That's great. I like that idea. So anyway, I wanted to recognize and thank you to our HR department and Donna. In the history of me, this is the longest classified sheet I've ever read. Wow. But anyway, I'd like to recognize Kathy Stuber's retirement from the early childhood family education. I had the honor of working with Kathy in the classroom, and she is a tremendous woman and very gifted in the area of early childhood. Kids would come in with separation or with crying, she could easily turn it into smiles and have them thinking and Play-Dohing, and she was just gifted with kids, and there are not many people like Kathy. Nothing ever got under her skin, paint all over the floor, paint on the walls, I mean, frosting, you name it. So anyway, I want Kathy to have a wonderful retirement because she's so deserving, and she's going to be very missed by many families. So, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Member Tyson. Member Kemp?
On 7.5 on donations, we had a total this month of $3,207.04 in donations. And specifically, I want to recognize one individual, which is Lynn Zeleny, contributed $3,000 of that $3,200 for an Easy Stand Evolve stander. So on behalf of the district and all of our schools, I really want to thank all the individuals that participated, especially this individual for that wonderful donation.
Member Keno, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the approval of the consent agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to number 8, action items, close enrollment at the Student Transition Education Program staff. Dr. Massey.
Thank you. You've heard me say many, many times that we love enrollment, we love open enrollment. But this is a case where due to large current enrollment in the STEP program, which is our adult transition program, currently on Broadway in the STEP building on the corner of Broadway and I don't know the cross street offhand.
I think it's
Okay, thank you. And we're actually using space in the education center as well, so we're combining space opportunities for that program. But given our staff capacity, the need to socially distant and provide a safe environment for those kids, administration is recommending that we close enrollment for the remainder of the school year for the STEP program, unless enrollment drops and kids graduate, and then we consider reopening enrollment.
All right. What is your pleasure with closing enrollment? Motion to close, or I'm asking for a motion.
Oh.
Motion to approve 8.1.
Thank you. Member Tyson. We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I do have a question. What is the enrollment at this time?
We are currently at 50 students.
Wow.
And are
They're
they,
visiting, they're full.
are they full in person or hybrid also?
That's hybrid. Now, remember, for students on an IEP and receiving special education services, an IEP team could decide to a particular student might come more frequently than every other day, but the model framework is hybrid and
Any further discussion? All those in favor of 8.1 signify by aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to 8.2, recommendation to award bid for the CLC demolition and remodeling project, including Forest View Elementary HVAC controls. Director Martini.
Thank you and good evening. The CLC remodeling will actually be done. If you approve this evening, they'll begin this work this coming February, and it will be so that we can locate students from STEP into a new facility and then no longer rent at 467 Broadway. We're pleased with the bid coverage here. We're going to ask you to approve all the alternates so that it increases the total contract to a total of $6,443,292. Of that, about $300,000 is the Forest View Elementary controls that Bill Schwartz has been seeking for quite some time. So we're pleased with this result, and we ask for you folks to approve those bids and alternates.
All right, do we have any questions for Director Martini? Do we have a motion to,
Quick question, is this within or below the budget numbers?
It's slightly above the estimate. However, this is going to cross a couple of fiscal years. And so we'll have some payments that will be after July 1st.
any other questions? Do we have a motion to approve 8.2?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second discussion.
Well, I'm curious, Mr. Martini, have we demolished something before?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, do we need extra, like insurance or anything?
Well, we'll have builder's risk insurance for this project, and the contractors also carry insurance.
Great, thank you.
Question. I know in Buildings and Grounds, a couple months ago, it was mentioned that local fire departments and police departments would participate testing some tools that they had before this actually comes down. Is that still happening?
It has been happening, and it will continue.
Any further discussion? That, we have a motion to approve the award for bid. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we gotta do a roll call on this one, I believe.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Member Clerk?
Okay. Member Kiddo?
Aye.
Member Kiddo votes aye. Member Olson? Member Olson is absent. Member Rayfield is absent. Member Tyson?
Aye.
Member Tyson votes aye. Member Peterson?
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luther votes aye. Member Corcoran? Aye. Member Corcoran votes aye.
All right, thank you. Member Clerk, with that, we'll move to 8.3, approve the revised long-term facilities maintenance revenue plan for Forest Lake area schools. Director Martini.
Well, this project has a revision because the Minnesota Department of Education denied some of our air quality improvements using needlepoint bipolar injection. Hospitals for years have done bipolar ionization injection into the air, but some of their methods to create positive and negative ions have produced ozone. There's a new technology, it's about 2 years old now, needlepoint bipolar ionization that doesn't produce any ozone. What this does, extra negative, extra positive ions in the air steals hydrogen atoms from viruses. That's why hospitals have been doing this for quite some time. However, this isn't part of something that can be done with the long-term facility maintenance indoor air quality laws as currently written. We're hopeful that we can use some of the CRF funds to apply this technology in the secondary. So we took that $535,000 project out of the process. We're coming to you with roofing instead as a replacement for that dollar amount. And the most interesting thing I think that happened in this process is underlined at the bottom of this email, where it says Forest Lake is no longer a 1B district. That's code for we now qualify for alternate facilities. So the budget demands are changed. We're just swapping out an ionization project for roofing and even better news at the bottom.
That's terrific.
We would ask your approval this evening, and then I've got some documents that the clerk would sign so that we could send this in as a revision to the MDE tonight.
And any other questions for Director Martini?
So air quality will still happen just under a different budget line, right?
Correct?
Okay.
What is your pleasure with 8.3?
Move to approve 8.3.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, discussion.
So I have a question for Mr. Martini.
Go ahead.
So I'm always amazed at like a 10-year plan and all the numbers you have to crunch and all the things you have to think about. So when you submitted that, it's for 10 years, correct?
Yes, but the reliability of anything beyond 3 years from now is very low.
So why
And
do
we
we
will
have
be
to,
changing it, of course.
right, so why does it need to be 10 years? Is that just the parameters
I
from?
think it's a test to see if we're able to do math.
Well, thank you for all the work on that, because I think it's crazy. But good job, thank you.
It's exciting.
It is.
Qualify after
You
all
need
these
some
years.
champagne.
13 years I've been doing this.
I know this is a big deal.
Thought it would never
It's
happen.
true that we started this with,
Yeah.
I'm happy we finished with Superintendent Mattson. We had community members involved with Superintendent Mattson, but Superintendent Smoola started this effort down at the legislature.
I
Wow,
remember that, which is more something.
that is incredible.
So we expect to hear a new goal that you can crusade for next time.
We'll have plenty of
I'm
more
sure there'll
goals.
be more.
I'm certain we will.
Well, thank you, Larry. That's
Good work.
a lot of work, is right.
All right, any further discussion on 8.3? I have a motion and a second. Member Clerk, would you please say roll?
Member Tyson?
Aye.
Tyson votes aye. Member Peterson?
Aye.
Member Peterson votes aye. Member Luther votes aye. Member Corcoran?
Aye.
Corcoran votes aye. Member Kettle?
Aye.
Member Kettle votes aye. Member Olson and member Regular absent.
Moving on, we have nothing under discussion items. Agenda item number 10, review the upcoming calendar dates.
I would point you to September 17th is our mid-month meeting. We zone committees at that time. So if you're on a 6 o'clock committee, mark the calendar. 7 o'clock committee, mark the calendar. Our plan would be to be virtual with those committees because of the size of those committees and limited space here. And because of the tight turnaround after the 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock committee and the 8 o'clock board meeting, we'll stay virtual for that brief board meeting that occurs in
And we are recruiting ideally some members of our community to
Yes.
join any one of these.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity to engage folks into our district, and if they're interested in those different committees, I'll share those with you this week. Please share out with the director who is working those committees. If you're looking for logistics, they need to know who those folks are so we can communicate meetings and dates and so on with those folks.
All right. Hearing nothing further under the calendar updates, motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment signify by aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.